Hey, happy Friday. This week, the Galaxy Ring became much more popular than we thought. Multiple credible rumors are saying that a foldable iPhone is actually coming soon, and open source AI got two big new shots in the arm. Welcome to the Friday Checkout. This video was sponsored by Ground News. Okay, for my first story of the week, here's something that neither I nor apparently Samsung expected, which is that the Galaxy Ring appears to be a pretty big hit. So according to DLX, Samsung has found that Galaxy Ring demand is so high that it's now apparently making 1 million units this year, which is 600,000 more than the expected quantity of 400,000 units, or about 2.5 times as much as originally planned. DLX says that this was due to the positive reception of the device during the pre-order phase, as the device has only just hit shelves this week, so significantly more sales are still expected later. The OG ring maker Aura says that they have sold 2.5 million smart rings so far, so that means Samsung could potentially lap the entire existing industry pretty quickly with their numbers. Very early Galaxy Ring reviews have ranged all the way from insanely positive 4.9 out of 5 stars to mostly negative takes as well, so I don't think we can conclusively say how good it is just yet. But excitement is here, and one major selling point seems to be that at least for now there is no subscription. This means that despite the fairly high $399 price tag, you would still be cheaper off than with an Aura ring after 17 months that costs $299 plus a $6 a month subscription. That said, Mishal Rahman this week found in the fine print of the presentation that no subscription fees only applies to currently available Samsung Galaxy features, while for future health features, different terms may apply. Whether that actually means anything yet, we just don't know. Either way, the Aura Ring 4 has just leaked via certification photos recently too, so clearly the Finnish company is gearing up to fight Samsung. It looks like smart rings could become a pretty big product category, and I'd actually be surprised if other smartphone makers didn't jump on this bandwagon soon too. Okay, for my second story of the week, some of the most convincing reports so far are claiming that Apple is pushing for a foldable iPhone by 2026. The information reports that Apple has settled on a design with an internal nickname called V68, which indicates that the idea has moved beyond prototyping and is now in proper development. And Digitimes Korea has specified that Apple is working with a Samsung display on the device, and we've also learned that it's supposed to be a clamshell foldable similar to Samsung's Flip line. I always said that this makes the most sense because a regular flip phone, when opened up, can have the same aspect ratio as a regular iPhone, so all the apps will scale perfectly, which would not be the case with a fold phone, where all the apps would have to be a little bit janky at least on day one, and I don't think Apple would accept that. The Korean report also says that, quote, due to challenges encountered in the Chinese smartphone market, Apple has reportedly adjusted its plans and may introduce the iPhone as its first foldable product. And my reading of this is that China is an extremely important market to Apple. Apple is currently losing market share in that country pretty heavily. That country really likes its foldables, and so Apple probably decided that especially for this market, they really need a foldable competitor. Makes sense. That said, I actually think an iPhone Flip will primarily benefit us in the West most because it will force Samsung to finally compete once again. So even as an Android user, I actually can't wait for this to happen. And if you're wondering, the 15 Plus is the worst performing new iPhone this year by far, according to Counterpoint. So if Apple chooses to replace any model with a Flip, I bet it would be this one. Okay, and for my third story of the week, open source might be winning the war for AI, with Meta and Mistral both firing really big shots this week. First, Meta unleashed Llama 3.1, an LLM that is apparently as good as other GPT-4 class models, but is also open source. This is based on 15 trillion tokens, it has 405 billion parameters, and it was trained on more than 16,000 NVIDIA H100 GPUs. And because it is open source, you can actually download it and run it on your own hardware, unlike all the other competitors that want you to pay for access to an API. Now, I've just made a video over on TechAltar explaining what running AI models on your machine actually looks like and whether you need an NPU for it, for example, so you can watch that next if you care. But suffice to say, you'd need way more powerful hardware for running any of the big models than what you'd get in any laptop. What is really interesting though is that on top of just the models, Zuck also put out a really long statement about how open source AI is the future, how all the developers are going to adopt it, and how this will dominate the industry going forward. He explained that developers, organizations, and governments prefer open source because they can fine-tune their models to their own use with confidence, and also because it lets them avoid being locked into a closed ecosystem. And he also thinks that open source will win because it leads to more collaboration and faster development. That said, Meta is giving away these models for free, even though they spent tens of billions of dollars developing them, and so I'm still waiting for some second shoe to drop, like how are they going to monetize any of this? What is the evil mastermind plan behind all of this? Something still has to happen, in my opinion. Oh, and Zuck has clearly styled himself to appear to look cool, I guess, so this is definitely part of a charm offensive. And meanwhile, the big original AI competitor of Meta, the French company called Mistral, has also released their new high-end model called Large 2 this week, but they actually changed their tune a little. Large 2 is now only licensed as open for non-commercial research users, and for businesses, they now need to obtain a separate license and a usage agreement from Mistral. So the businesses need to pay up, and that's the least that I would expect from Meta going forward too. Alright, for our release monitor, there were 0 interesting new products released this week, so we're moving on right away to the brief, starting with a story on Search GPT. That's right, OpenAI has officially semi-launched its search engine that we knew was coming, and unsurprisingly, it looks a lot like a text box for the user to type in that will then try to give mostly full answers with small links rather than classic search results. This is a prototype like seemingly every new tech product lately, and my account did not pass the waiting list, so I can't quite try it myself yet, but I bet that every internet publisher and Google absolutely hates this. And to rub even more salt into Google's wounds, Apple Maps is now available on the web in a beta, finally moving off just iOS. That's right, you could now theoretically use Apple Maps on Windows if you really wanted to. Also this week, Google has cancelled its long-standing plans to block third-party cookies in Chrome. This is a massive turnaround considering that Firefox and Safari block third-party cookies by default, and given that Google has spent many years trying to hype up whatever alternatives they wanted to replace cookies next. None of those alternatives were actually well received, so I suppose Google Chrome users are gonna be stuck with cookies for now. And moving back to AI land, Elon and co have turned on 100,000 liquid-cooled H100 GPUs in a cluster for xAI, which will be used to train the Grok 3 LLM. This is just an absurdly large piece of infrastructure, and for context, the gigantic Llama 3.1 model that we've just talked about was trained on 16,000 GPUs, so this is more than 6 times that. Given that one H100 is supposed to cost $30,000, that would mean that this single cluster would cost $3 billion for just the NVIDIA parts. That is mind-boggling. Anyway, in good news, Intel has said that it will finally fix the issues that are plaguing their 13th and 14th gen CPUs with all kinds of crashes, which we actually talked about last week. Intel said that they actually found the issue and that they'll deliver a microcode patch sometime in mid-August, so that's not too bad, I guess, and it only took the company a couple of months of really terrible PR to fix this mess. That's good, I guess. Anyway, moving on, LEGO's first Fortnite sets are here, and they consist of a 954-piece Battle Bus kit for $100 and also the 691-piece Supply Llama for $40. My writer Tristan, who actually plays a lot of Fortnite, forced me to add this segment, and I don't actually know what words like Supply Llama actually mean, but I really hope you're happy, Tristan. Anyway, in surprisingly good news, the Swiss government announced a new law that will mean that all code that the government pays to develop should become open source. Now, I guess military projects and a bunch of other things might be exempt from this law, but that's pretty cool. And in hilarious news, CrowdStrike, which managed to grind half of the world to a halt, has apparently sent $10 Uber Eats vouchers to its partners to say sorry. That is so stupid. Like, I bet that is definitely going to help. Although actually news is also that this week the company's CEO was called to testify to Congress over his company's failings, so maybe the vouchers won't be enough. And especially for news like this, which has quite a political side to it, I like to turn to my sponsor, Ground News. Ground News is a website and an app that aggregates and contextualizes news across politics, business, tech, and more in a really helpful way. Every story comes with a quick visual breakdown of the political bias, factuality, and ownership of the sources that are reporting on it, and all of this is backed by ratings from 3 independent news monitoring organizations. So in the CrowdStrike case, for example, I can see around 90 sources covering the story, and I can also see that the coverage is pretty balanced but slightly leaning towards the left. I can see just how factual the news outlets are and who they're owned by, and one thing that I particularly like is this map that shows you who first broke the story, and then also where in the world the coverage is coming from. This is super helpful for learning how narratives actually get shaped. And you can then quickly compare the various headlines and have some real-time context. For example, CGTN here is owned by the Chinese Communist Party, while the Wall Street Journal is owned by Jeff Bezos, and both are marked as having mixed factuality. Context like this is very much needed in our highly polarized times. And best of all, Ground News also has a dedicated blind spot section that shows you news stories that were mostly covered by only one side of the political spectrum. To get smarter about the news, go to ground.news/Friday checkout or click on the link in the video description, and don't forget to try the premium subscription for the full picture. You can get 40% off that premium subscription with my link, so be sure to use that, and I'll see you next Friday.